Hello again and welcome back to another video. Today I'll be giving you some tips as well as demonstrating some infrastructure using the Create Power Grid mod. I just wanted to show this just so people can understand how to use it as well as how to understand this from an electrical engineer perspective, or at least I'm into mechatronics, but I'm still an electrical. I still wanted to give some idea as to how to properly send power through your systems as well as using it within your world. To start off, you obviously want to have your nice generator right here, and for your first tip is to keep your generator nice and simple and linear. Most generators in the world, like from oil to nuclear, usually keep their generators in a simple line by line area. So I'm using diesel, so this will just be a direct, straightforward path for the transmission lines to enter into, as well as you can simply copy a schematic of this and then replace it over and over, and then just hook up all power connecting to this one point. Having your power all at one point makes it much more simple to transfer all of that said power into multiple areas. However, to transfer it, you'll obviously need some transmission poles, which is what I have here, as I am using some heavy wire connectors as well as some iron wire. These iron wires act like the IRL transmission wires that we usually use silver or a mix of copper. I'm pretty sure it's silver most of the time, to transfer all these wires all over. Now the max distance, at least for this iron wire, is about 64 blocks. So from here all the way down to this point is 64 blocks. So you can get pretty far with your creations. Now there is power drop in this game, or at least in this mod, but it is very little from what I've seen, as it does not affect a lot of the power that I'm using currently. From here over to that generator that we were at, which is at spawn, is about 200 blocks. I believe like 160 if I'm correct. But close to there, but there's still a decent amount of power still flowing through. The next tip, which is to always have your circuits in parallel no matter where they are, except for a few cases. Obviously, these two poles are connected to two different systems, but they still end up being parallel as they both end in the same negative point and take the same positive point from them. However, this one is in series, which we'll get to later. And this one is just a transformer that will convert the power, this heavy 500 volts, into 130 volts, which is now much more useful. And at least in America, we usually have about 120 volts flowing to our system, and I believe in Europe it's about similar 130, just a couple volts, or 140 volts, about a 20 volt voltage difference. However, they still run the same thing, and they both run off the same transmission line, except the only difference is instead of using iron wire, you're just using insulated copper wire or any type of copper wire for it. Now we come to this area, which is essentially a replica of let's say a neighborhood that you would have. You see all these power poles in your neighborhood connecting to your house and to your neighbor's house as well. At least for the connecting part, it can be done in several ways. However, for the connection that we are doing today, it is a parallel circuit. Now, obviously, these buildings are all in parallel, same with this one, but they're just connected in a different way. These buildings over here are all connected in parallel, but only to the totem poles. So each power pole or totem pole here connects to two separate buildings. And if I go down here, you can see most of these lights are on, and it shows you 130 volts. Now, voltage will drop from each section of these houses, but it's like about a couple hundred, like 0.1 volts or 0.05 volts. Now in parallel circuits, the only thing that drops in these is the current, not the voltage. However, the voltage can go down slowly as current drops as well. Now over here on this side, it is still parallel and not a series circuit. The only reason for that is because this power line, all of these connectors are all power, and all of these are all negative, which then connects to this light, which then separates those connections in total. For example, this power over here connects all the way into this switch and then goes back into this lamp and then sends the power back into that negative connection. Now, as you can see from the bottom, it went to 130 to 129.959. And just to show you, all of these can be turned on with no problem to the system, as the voltage is still the same and keeping up within it. So you can technically could have run about a double of this and it would still be fine. Now, the next tip is to use series circuits when you need to divide voltage within a high voltage system and also keep a consistent current flowing through them. Now, this could be what I have right here. This potential farm right here could be used to automate your farms. Let's say wheat, carrot, potatoes, whatever you need. So you have enough voltage in your system to split it between these houses or your villager houses and also for your growth bed. But the voltage coming from this is still too high. So what you could do is to split the voltage within this circuit by creating a series circuit, because the series circuit doesn't reduce current, it reduces the voltage. So each one of these growth lamps, let's say, takes about 240 volts. Now, for the next tip is to still use series circuits only when they are either used in the circuit boards or when you need to reduce the amount of voltage between your parallel circuits you have. For example, your transmission line over here, this is still 500 for each side because it's in parallel. We can then split that and then send this out to somewhere else within this ether. But let's say instead I wanted to send this 500 volts into this farm that I have. Now, this farm has 2 growth bulbs and each one takes about 240 volts. Now, I could just send the full 500 volts into one of these or make a parallel circuit out of them. However, that is not the case, because like I said with the neighborhood, the parallel circuits would split the current, not the voltage. So we have to make this into a series circuit so that the voltage splits but not the current. This makes sure that the current stays consistent and also makes it much more easier to work with and to divide voltage, because you can essentially just scale this up and just move it back, add like more growth bulbs and connect more of them in series, which makes it much more simpler within your building or maybe factory. For example, what I have here is 519 volts still flowing through here. Both of these are giving us 500 volts on each side because it's in parallel. Over here though, both of these growth bulbs, as you can see, are connected. So it goes from positive to negative, then that negative to this positive for this growth lamp, then back down to negative, and then send back into the system. To show you that it works, flip this switch, still 517 volts, so we only lost 2 volts within this whole entire circuit, and each one gets 258 volts. So it's about 20, I believe 20 volts over the limit, but it's still working and it hasn't exploded, which is good. So now you can easily use this farm to grow your crops, and at the same time you can have your lights over here still on, so you don't be sitting in the dark, with about 129 volts still in the system. So this is still pretty good within this small system, and this is all being run off of 520 volts from that diesel generator over there. So that is it for the video. If you do enjoy this and want me to make some more tips, just like and comment on whatever else you need help with. I'm willing to help. I will get into series parallel circuits, which is a combination of both that farm in the back and those houses. That is a much more complex system, but it can still work, and I believe it's only useful in circuit boards unless I'm wrong, and in the real life situations they do use this for infrastructure. But anyways, have a good day.